going into the game Saturday, Nebraska, Maryland, big game for a lot of reasons. But it's a big game for Heinrich Haarberg. Our opening headline is this the comeback of Heinrich Haarberg or the continuation of his fall? And, you know, it's interesting. You look at the numbers last week. Pro Football Focus does overall grades on just like the cumulative sum. And for offense, other than just the pure running, so the Haarberg run and a couple of the Johnson runs, it was one of their lowest games. It was their lowest graded out offensive game of the year. Ooh. Overall grade was the lowest. Mm-hmm. Pass blocking grade was the lowest. Passing grade was the lowest overall. So, you know, last week was the first time where, you know, there were some cries like, hey, what would Sims look like now? But I think last week it really ramped up. And what the coaches before last week could hang their hat on, it was Heinrich Haarberg is 5-1 as a starter. Mm-hmm. You know, we're sticking with the winner. Well, last week, I think, you know, the way the offense looked, it's led to a lot of debate. Will there be a shorter leash on Heinrich Haarberg?
Didn't sound like it from what Matt Rule said on Monday. He actually kind of praised Heinrich because he's embraced that role so much. He embraces the pressure. But Sean, I would tell you this, and you know this on these shows, I've been kind of a defender of Heinrich Haarberg, wouldn't you say? Backer. But you have to acknowledge that I'd say in the last two games, he's taken a step back. He took a step back against Purdue, I thought, and then took another step back against Michigan State. Now, Northwestern, it's not like he lit the world on fire, but I think he was okay. Now, here's okay. I'd have to think back. Just okay. So 3 straight games, not great. But he fits what they're doing very well. And again, I always use the term willing combatant, and he's a very willing combatant. I mean, that's what Rule talked about on Monday. Loves his competitiveness, loves the way he embraces this challenge of being Nebraska's quarterback right now. And there he is.
Yeah, I look at Haarberg.
How do you look at him, Sean?
You know, when he holds the ball a long time, that's when the problems happen. I think when Haarberg gets rid of the ball quickly, where it's this 1-2-3 throw, like he's pretty solid. But when that 1-2-3 throw is not there, mm-hmm. and he has to kind of move around, look around, or run around because the protection breaks down, that's when the problems tend to have happened for Haarberg. He is not a good quarterback when the play breaks down.
No, he's been indecisive. I've noticed the indecision more as a runner, which he addressed.
Well, teams are defending him differently.
They're defending him better, probably.
They're marrying a safety to him the entire game. So there's always a safety on him. It's like man-to-man defense. He's got his own man on mm-hmm. him. And they're only playing one safety high, a lot of man-to-man on pass plays, forcing Nebraska's inexperienced young receivers to win at the line of scrimmage, get off the line of scrimmage, get open and tight man coverage, which they don't have a lot of guys that can do that right now.
They don't. Well, that's not Haarberg's fault.
No. So
the most interesting part of the conversation to me is this. What do we always do with Nebraska coaches and coaches in general? You want them to develop players. We always cite that, like, hey, how does he develop? Recruiting's important, but so is development. So with Haarberg, it seems like, now this is going to sound preachy. I don't mean to sound preachy, but with Haarberg, it seems like, forget development. He's done. It seems like there's a segment of the fan base that just say, I've seen enough. Don't worry about developing him. Now, wait a second. You really just want to cut him off at 6 games and say he doesn't have a chance to develop as a player? I have a problem with that. And apparently Matt Rule does. Because what did Rule say this week, Sean? I'm coaching Haarberg for the here and now, but also for next year and a year from then, 2 years down the line. And that raised eyebrows. That raised eyebrows of people that are just so, and I guarantee you we're going to get a lot of comments on this because it's a hot button topic. That raised eyebrows of the people that just want to move on. Discard him. White him out. That's an interesting approach to me. Like, oh, really? You just seen enough. 6 games. You're just ready to move on to the transfer portal.
So Jeff Sims played 2 games as a starter and had the offense had 8 turnovers. And then he came in, he's played 5 plays since that. He had a turnover that led to a touchdown and a terrible sack.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like he's been much better. I mean, that's the thing. And I think there's this thought, oh,
Chuba.
But again, we've seen Chuba. Like, what? I don't know. I mean,
but I don't think this is just Heinrich Haarberg by default. Is that, if that's what you're suggesting?
It's a head coach feel. I think Matt Rule Saturday will have to get a feel for this game, how Haarberg's playing, and if they have to make a change, that's his call. And I think it's his call, only his call. That's why he makes the money. He has to make that call.
Right. And listen, I know I can be sort of obnoxious about this topic, and I just want to make clear to listeners, I acknowledge he's taken a step back 2 straight weeks. And you also have to acknowledge he's put the ball on the ground 14 times, as you pointed out in your Pro Football Focus article. He's put the ball on the ground 14 times. He's a lot of the issue when it comes to turnovers.
And Nebraska leads the nation in lost turnovers at 22.
Yeah. Yeah, they're minus 12. To put that in perspective, Nebraska's minus 12. To put that in perspective, Penn State is plus 16. But now they lead the nation, but plus 16. Maryland, by the way, right over the Mendoza line. They're
1.
Yeah, they're basically plus 1.
They've lost 12.
Okay.
So Nebraska has 10 more turnovers than Maryland.
Wow.
But a lot of that goes back to those first 2 games. I mean, Nebraska started in this hole that they were probably never going to get out of. When you start out the year -8.
Yeah, it's hard to get out. You're right.
I mean, it's like buying an expensive boat that you realize you can't afford. You're just not going to get out of debt.
So with Heinrich, you hope that that's not another step back. They would have had to beat Michigan State despite him. And you don't want that to be the situation that a team has to win despite its quarterback play. So now you want to see him take a step forward. And along those lines, Satterfield talked about they just want him to go back to playing free like he did earlier in the season when he played like a young quarterback who's just kind of happy to be out there and run through people's face, as Satterfield said. Just run through people's face.
Here's the thing. How much tape was out on Heinrich Haarberg before he started playing?
Not much.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah,
so he had the advantage of having no tape out there on him. No tape of what the offense would look like with him.
Yeah.
Guess what's out there now?
Lots
of tape. Guess what's out there? Staffs with Connor Stallions all over them. And we'll get into Connor Stallions later in the show. But these staffs make a lot of money, and their job is to break you down and figure out ways to slow you down.
100.
And Big Ten coaching is really good.
It's the best. It's the best.
And I think Matt Rule's learning that. Scott Frost for sure. I mean, Scott Frost thought he could just use his brilliant offensive mind and carve apart this league, and he learned the hard way.
It's the best coaching league. Now, of course, our friends in SEC country would beg to differ, but you hear a lot of people say
SEC's got better athletes. Big Ten's got better coaching.
Yeah,
I mean that's the SEC. That's Big Ten is a better lineman league too. Well, for O-line,
O-line, I'd say O-line. I think the best D linemen in the world are from the Southeast. So,
but pro coaches,
a lot of those guys stay down there.
Linemen, though, in the Big Ten are who they like to draft because they play in weather as well. Or those SEC guys don't play in cold weather.
No, they're right.